Hey everyone, I wanted to stop by real quick before this podcast starts and say you should like, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget to follow me on all my social medias at John D. Clouser. It's literally the same name as the name that you subscribe to on this YouTube channel. So enjoy this clip, and I'll see you guys on the other side. Did you guys see how I bit down on that microphone there?
I'm raw dogging this chick, right? She goes, yo, I'm on birth control. You can just bust a nut on me whenever you want. And you know what I did? I busted. So now this is Dylan. He just turned 2 the other day.
All right, what is going on, guys? How are you doing? We're here on another episode of The John Show with your host, me, John D. Clouser. This is episode 31. Hope you guys are doing well. I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. I know you guys were so wondering, I hope John asks how I'm doing so then I can immediately ask him how he's doing. Well, I'm doing good. I'm doing fine. What are we on day 1,477 of the pandemic? I don't think we give a fuck anymore about the mask. I don't think anyone cares. I still see a lot of people wearing masks, and that's the thing. It's just kind of like a normal thing. We wear masks. You're on a large group of people. You kind of minimize that. You don't know if you should be around a lot of people, if you can be around a lot of people. It's because no one's telling us if we can or if we can't. We're just kind of take the thing. Apparently cases are going up. I don't know. I've kind of just hey, wear a mask. Don't cause any problems. And then everything else, wash your hands. I'm always washing my hands. Wash your hands. Wash your hands all the time. All the time. Make it be overly washing your hands. So, it's almost crazy. It just becomes a crazy big habit. And I had a whole list of things that I was going to talk about, but that's a great segue of talking about something that I was going to talk about this week. So, I normally don't ever talk about my relationship stuff or anything romantic that I do. I just don't think it's anyone's real big business. I don't think it's anyone's business other than my own. And even for me, I'm just kind of it is what it is. I kind of live a nomadic life. I live on the third floor of a mansion, and I talk into a camera on the third floor of a mansion in Kansas City, Missouri. So I don't my life's pretty simple. I came from Honduras. My whole dream was just to be able to do film and do that. And in the process of it, I started doing a lot of audio stuff. And that's actually where it all was going to start, was audio. Then I switched over. But so I live really mundane. And for most time, liking of the opposite sex, I'm a he, him, I guess what you could say if you ask me what my pronouns are. I don't really go by it. I'm a bro. I do hang loose. I say woo a lot. I'm just few steps away from frat guy, because I was a frat guy. I was a frat guy. But so when it comes to relationship stuff, that doesn't really attract a lot of women. Women, it's not really something that they would want. I get it. It's cool. It's understandable. And maybe it's because of the type of women I date. One of the things I can brag about when it comes to this kind of stuff is that I get very, very good quality women. I date very intelligent women. I am lucky in the sense of I date gorgeous women too. Absolutely stunning women. Everyone I've dated, I'm damn, I don't know how I did this. I don't know how I somehow got this woman to think that I'm halfway enjoyable, and she's spending time with me, and we spend time together, and then most of the time it's we do our thing and we move on with each other. So, but what's really weird is that if you were to look at the roster of women I've been with, romantically and relationships wise, you would see that tends to be a lot of darker skinned women, ethnic women. I'm ethnic man. I'm half Honduran, half Egyptian, and I tend to date like those kind of caliber women, not just Hondurans or Egyptian women, but African women or Latino women, or most of the time, if you can get an Afro Latino and you mix the two, they're awesome women as well. So if you're to see the roster, that's what it would normally be. You'd be like, okay, she's from Venezuela, she is from Nigeria, she is from Cuba. It's like just all over the place. It's just tons of different like women in that sense. But like this one time I thought, I'm like, you know what, John, like I met this really pretty girl at the gym, and she was gorgeous. She was a really pretty white girl, and I've never dated a white girl in that sense, and I've never gotten romantically with a white woman. And everything was normal, like everything else, like any relationship, go on some dates, get to know each other, hang out. And then what was so crazy, was that one night he drank a little bit, the mood was set. I felt like it was right. We took the next step. We had relations. And then after we got done, she came back into the bedroom. It was at her house. And she was like, I don't always wash my hands. And I was like, uh-huh. I'm like, what? She's like, yeah, I don't always wash my hands after, I go to the restroom. And I'm like, why are you saying this? And she's like, well, because like, like I the other night when we were out over having having dinner with one of our friends, couple friends, like you kind of just said that like you've never touched, the door, like the little handle thing on your toilet. And I'm like, yeah. And like, cause I just don't ever do it. Like I've always just like, boom, it's over, done. Toilet's flushed. That's just how I've always done it. Like I just figure, and I still wash my hands, but I just like, why do it? And I always feel good to do that. I don't know. I always like using my foot because I always like knowing that like, okay, I'm still super flexible enough where I can do that. I feel like there's a point if I can't do that anymore, then I'm old. And that's when I need to like start packing it up and be like, all right, well, we're going to go sit on the pasture and we're just going to chill out there now. I'm not going to try to do it this bullshit. We're just going to sit out there and relax. But so she was like, and so I just thought like maybe I should tell you this now. And I'm like, okay. And I'm like, so when, like, we hadn't been dating for a long time, just, maybe I would say any given week, like we were eight weeks in, so like 2 months into this thing. And I was like, so you don't wash your hands after when? And like, so she's like, well, yeah, if I go to like the restroom, sometimes I don't wash them because like, there's no need. I just don't feel like there's any reason to do that. And I'm like, okay, I just assumed she was just meaning by number one, like, pee. Like I can get that. That's understandable. Out in a public restroom, not acceptable. I would assume you should always just do that. But at home, I can maybe understand. I would never do it. I think that's gross. I think that's awful. I think it's horrific to do to yourself. But whatever. And she was like, well, I'm like, okay, so then how about number two? Like, do you wash your hands after that? And she's like, no, I don't wash my hands after that. Like, cause like, sometimes, you're going to go wash the dishes or you're going to go wash the dog. So what's the point? Your hands are going to get clean anyway. And I was like, and I sat there and I looked at her and I'm like, pink eye's a thing, right? You can still get diseases from your eyes. And I was just sitting there and I just felt every muscle of mine just like tensing up. And I'm just thinking like, John, her hands were over your face. You were kissing her. Like, you need to go home real quick and you need to run home and go take a shower because you might have pink eye because of this white girl who decided not to wash her hands and had coitus with you. It's like, you need to run, dude. You need to get out of this. but that was it. Like I mean I stood there for a while. I'm like, this is horrific, honey. Like, you can't be doing this. Like, you can't be living like this. And I kept going back. Like, I'm like, okay, so you're just joking, right? And she's like, no, I'm being serious. Like, I just, you should know this thing about me. If we're gonna keep going on, this is just something about me that I think that's just like weird and quirky. And that's the thing that annoys the fuck out of me when girls are always like, I'm just weird and I'm like kind of quirky. And I'm like, no, I don't think you're weird. Like, I don't think you understand what weird is. And they're like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, like, okay, so for me, this is a true thing. Like, a couple nights ago, I stayed up till like 4 a.m. just looking at and trying to find the weirdest fucking videos. And I find weird shit, some weird stuff. And I found this video of this girl, normal girl, very pretty, very cute, maybe Russian, Sweden, Finland-ish, maybe, who knows. She was just like of that kind of woman, that kind of caliber, of that kind of descent. And descent, yeah. Anyway, so when I was watching this video, it was just her, and she was just wearing leggings, and she had like a crop top on, like a t-shirt, or like a t-shirt just like I have on. And then she started taking all of it off, and then she had like all these pairs of panties, and she started putting each one up her butthole. And I'm like, I found that video, like, and that's what I do. That's weird. That if you want to talk about things that are weird, that's weird, and that's a real thing. But going back to this girl that I dated, I'm like, nope, I don't think we can do this. And that's another line I found. So I can't deal with girls with 81-pound lizards, and if you don't wash your hands. See, those are the two things. If you can just avoid doing those two things, I think I could possibly marry you. There's a good chance. But yeah, so that's my love life. That was a love life story. I don't even know what brought that story up, to tell you the truth, of why I even wanted to tell that. Like, and what's so funny? So I was doing a podcast. So I produce a podcast called Cool Baby Podcast, right? You go check it out. It's on iTunes right now. Video version of it, I record a video version, but they only use like maybe a clip, a 42-second clip, which is a very specific number, I know, 42 seconds. But so I produced that podcast, and when I was working on the last one, I let them have drinks, and they kept like drinking it right next to the microphone, and I could just hear the little, that's an awful sound. The sound is horrific. So I want to apologize twice. One, because I just did it not knowing, but two, I was showing you what I was doing. But yeah, so what's up? How are you guys? So I'm doing this podcast right now. It's like 12:04 a.m. It'd be Sunday, September 27th, our Lord and Savior. So what is it? Sunday football. Yeah, awesome. But like, what's so funny is like I get these done. I come home Saturday from work, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna get this podcast done. I'm gonna get it all set up. We're gonna do it, because I don't think to set all this stuff up, because believe it or not, guys, this is like a set, and this is just like, these are all just like moving parts that I have to make up a set, because I want to kind of give like, I want to eventually have like a table behind me. I want to have a couple jerseys hanging up here, because I want to have like this really bro kind of feel, like hang loose, like kind of frat guy. And because of the idea that I have for this podcast, this little one is a little bit bigger. It's so cool, and I guess this is like a kind of a big lead to that. But saying, like, if you guys are watching, thank you guys so much for watching. Please give this video a thumbs up. It's been awesome. Like, it's really cool. I've been seeing a little growth in this, and it's like been enough to be like, okay, maybe you should do a little bit more. You should start and I've always wanted to do that too, because I think it's a really good practice. But yeah, I knew there's a reason why I went there. I went too far out, because I like practicing going how far I can like start a subject and then like start something else and try to come back to the first subject, because I think it's a fun little exercise to do. But I went too far out, and I'm trying to come back, and I can't remember what I was trying to come back to. Oh, drinking the water, going to this podcast that I produce. You should go check that podcast out. It's cool, baby. It's on iTunes. I think I've already said that, but if I haven't, thank you so much. Thank you guys so much for watching these videos. Give these thumbs up. Girl washing her hands. Talked about that. Does anyone still take baths? Like, I have some friends that take baths, and like I guess that answered my question. Yeah, they're still, but like, who does this? I feel like it's gross to sit in your own filth. But what's so interesting, my friends are like, well, you know what I do, John? I take a shower. So if I'm gonna take a bath, John, what I do is I take a shower, and then I take my bath, and I sit in there and I relax, and I'm like, what do you do in there? Like, do you just play on your phone? Do you listen to music? Do you drink wine? Like, all these things you could do and not be wet. Like, that's the thing. Like, it's just the idea of being wet and sitting in a pool of your own filth, or maybe you pre-washed, which is ridiculous, because if you're wet, you washed, then you're done. You should just be done. And like, if you can't sit in a shower and cry about your problems, then I don't know what to tell you. Like, I don't know why you're doing the bath, and I guess people feel relaxed by it. But then what my friends were saying is like, I take my shower, then my bath, then after my bath, I take another shower. It's like, why are you doing so much? You're doing so much for something that is not worth it. It's not worth doing to begin with. Like, I try to think about it. I'm like, okay, I'm going to take a bath, let the water run. Because in the time that you let the water run, it has to get hot. And then you run the bath, and then you wait for it to fill up. By that time, you could have just taken a shower, and the whole thing that you needed to do could have been done and over with. But instead, you decide to take out this long process. But hey, maybe you're one of these other people though who takes a shower and then takes your bath, which is incredibly pointless and incredibly absurd. And somehow Latino people are the problem. And that's another thing. Things that fucking annoy me. Oh man, John, you were doing so good without saying the F word. So I've been really trying, because I had a conversation with another good friend of mine. And like, John, like, like, it's always good to practice on not saying the F word so much, because like you may or may not say the F word a lot. And I'm like, you're right. And I'm like, I need to do is I need to practice on that, and that's something that I need to do. And I was doing so good, doing so great, and then I just had to F it up, right? Anyway, so another thing that annoys me, something that really annoys me, is like when I like white people. I feel like this is like me bashing white people, and some people might be thinking like, John, like, why are you talking about white people so bad? Like, why? It's like, what? Hey, I was adopted by some, so I think I have some right. I lived in the culture for quite some time. Oh boy, did I live in that culture for quite some time. Like, don't get me wrong, beautiful, great people, awful food. That's what people like. When people ask me, John, how was it being adopted as a brown person, being adopted and raised in the white culture? I'm like, it's awesome. It's had some fun times. Food is awful though. Food is not so good. Not good at all. And then when you go and you hang around with other brown people, and you start, getting bigger and bigger, and like more and more into that, because the older you get, the more questions you have, the more you want to get to know other things. You're surprised when you go to like, Black Thanksgivings or Latino 4th of July parties and these kind of things, and you realize that macaroni and cheese doesn't come in the box, and you realize how much people hate the idea that cheese goes on tacos. It's insane. It is the level of hatred that Latino people have, and I have it too. But I had it not knowing that it was just like part of us. It was part of being Latino, being a Latino male, a human. as I can say, is that the anger towards that is horrendous. And that's not like just what I'm talking about. What irritates me about like white people talking about how awesome tacos are with cheese on it. One, they're really not. It's not good at all. Two, it's not good at all. So please stop doing it. It'd be nice. It really would be nice if we could just end that. If we could start there, I think we might have a chance with all this other stuff. If we could just end the people liking tacos with cheese on it. Ugh, woof. It is so nasty. But when white people are like, John, you make a good pico, but you should have my grandma's pico. And I'm thinking like, okay, maybe this person's grandmother maybe was raised in Mexico, or maybe spent like summers in Peru, things like that. That's what I start thinking. But they're like, no, just my grandma from Dodge City, Iowa. Just she makes really good salsa. It's like just because you make it hot doesn't make it good salsa. These are third world hands. These hands could make you some tacos. Like, trust me, and it won't have cheese on them. Because this dog can hunt. So, guys, we're here. I'm doing a podcast. I'm like 20 minutes in. And, what I've realized is the more podcasts I do by myself, they're fun. I enjoy doing these ones by myself. And then I also, do another podcast called The Aaron and John Show with the comedian, the great and funny Aaron Naylor. I do that with him, and if you watch this comes out on Tuesday, and that one comes out on Thursday when he's in town. And some ideas I've been having with doing even with this podcast is like maybe bringing someone on, like a different person on, because I do kind of talk about serious things, and like I would like to talk to other people. As much fun as it is to do this by myself, it really is. But it also would be a good to help. What I've realized with doing a podcast with Aaron, it's a completely different game doing a podcast with another person. And I thought, I always had that down. I had that style down with sitting and talking with someone, but I think I don't have it. And and I'm not saying I have this thing down either, talking about myself and into a camera. And there's still things I do that I'm like, okay, John, you make sure you need to tilt it this way a little bit more with your idea of what you're trying to do here. And then tilt it that way a little bit. Maybe tilt it up and down and then to the side. It's just all over the place. And so it's fun because it makes this whole thing really, it's such an interesting art form, like doing this in the sense of like just talking. All I'm doing is talking, and it really is. I feel like the last frontier, but I don't know. Does every new like art kind of feel like that? Because it's completely different than filmmaking. There's some aspects of filmmaking to this, but in filmmaking you're not sitting. There's a lot of other people. There's actors. There's film crew. So this is, I guess, is it like, and the thing is, it's the last place you can really go and be just yourself. I guess is what things like. What the fuck am I talking about? You guys want to know about movie, my movie this week. So I watched a very interesting movie. And when I said I watched it, it was so hard to watch this film. So it's on Netflix. If you have Netflix, you can check it out. If you don't have Netflix, I guess you can just try to find it online. Which I totally bombed on last week, and how I said I was gonna put a description or like a link to where it is in the description. So this movie's called My Octopus Teacher. So it's about a guy, South African guy, would go out into this little reef area that was like able to, the waves weren't so hard so you could go down and you could free dive because there was all this kale and all this like seaweed that was around. And so there's this little octopus that it found, and it befriended this little female octopus. It was a little, and this whole time, like you're seeing this footage, he's done all these nature shows, so the cinematography in this is really good, and just the fact that like the equipment that he uses makes it even cooler, because he just uses little GoPros, and he brings down like nice cameras, waterproof cases, because he was a cinematographer. He's done all this nature stuff, so like this is normal for him. But he just felt like he was in this weird place in his life, and he just needed. And this was weird that because he befriended this little octopus, and it showed him more about life and being an artist, and that's really what it's about. But what was so cool is that he went down there, and what I thought it was kind of like over the top too much as a filmmaker, and I could totally see this to be something I could make by myself and just do it, because it was like super low budget. I'm assuming the most that it cost was probably maybe, I'm going to say $10,000, just because if you really were going to go hardcore about it, because he did probably, I would assume he hired someone or had one of his buddies help him sit down, because you sat down like this, and he was talking to a camera, or like the camera would be right here, and he'd be looking to somebody interviewing him, and he was talking about it. It cut from that to him in the water. Then sometimes he'd be walking, taking steps, like dramatic steps, slow motion stuff. There would be drone shots of him, like, of the ocean, and like you could see like of the bay and all the little area that he would go down and swim down. Like those little things, like filler shots. But for the most part, like I'm assuming that would cost a little bit more, because if you wanted to have someone do that, or you'd want to rent a camera, I'm assuming just renting a camera. But it was good. I mean, out of 5, I would give it a 3. The only thing I didn't like was the fact that he just made it really artsy fartsy, in the sense of like, this octopus, like you'd come up to me and it would like sit on my arm, and like I really felt like I would look into its eyes and look back onto me, and like I'm like, that's completely fine. And I'm assuming, and I've heard that these octopuses are like super intelligent creatures, but the thing is like, you're not really able to fully communicate with it, that like you can't put like that deep of a meaning to this animal, because it might just be an octopus, and it might be just a thing looking and breathing, and it just doesn't understand anything more about you than you understand about it, and it's just two things, and it could just be an octopus. And like, if you would just, for me personally as a filmmaker, I would have just left it at that. Like it was really cool. Like, it touched me, and like maybe that's where my not being as old as he is. He was a guy like probably in his mid-40s, so he's like an older version of who I am in that sense. And like, it was a good way of looking at it, and it was a way of like, or a self-reflection movie or documentary, where like you're just supposed to take from it like this man's experience in this time period with this little octopus, because I don't want to give any spoilers away, but it's only a short period of time that he has with this octopus. But it was all right. It was cool. I would definitely, if you want an interesting little documentary that's probably off the cuff of something that you'd probably never watch, I would recommend it. The Octopus King. So, but yeah, we have about a minute left in this podcast, and ow, I just banged the shit on my hand. But if you've gotten this far, I want to say thank you guys so much for watching. Again, like, comment, and subscribe. We're growing small little margins, and growing and growing and growing and growing. But anyway, guys, I want to say thank you guys so much for watching. 30 minutes, John. It's really not that hard. The hardest part is just pushing record and doing it. I tell myself that every time I get done with one of these. The only thing is, like, my voice is really raspy now, but it might be just because I've been talking for 30 minutes straight doing that. But again, thank you guys for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe. I really hit the shit on my knuckle. All right, guys. Bye.